Hello everyone! It's Miss Angela from the Fort Worth Public Library. Welcome back to another Fort Worth Nature Center Discovery Club story time. Today I've brought along a friend to help you guess what we're talking about. Do you know what it is? Did you say turtle? No? Hippo? No? Alligator? Dog? Oh, frog! You're right, it is a frog! Let's go, frog! Our song today is 5 Green and Speckled Frogs. So maybe you know this one, maybe not, but if not, we're going to go through it together. Put out your arm like this, that's your log. And put out your other hand, that's your 5 frogs sitting on the log. Let's count them together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 green and speckled frogs. 5 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there are 4 green speckled frogs. Now I'm going to bring in my puppet and you keep doing it with your hands, okay? Let's see how many frogs we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there are how many? 1, 2, 3. 3 green speckled frogs. 3 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there are how many? 1, 2. 2 green speckled frogs. 2 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there's just 1 green speckled frog. 1 green and speckled frog sat on a speckled log, eating the most delicious bugs. Yum, yum. It jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there are no green speckled frogs. All right, great singing, everyone. That's a great one to do with your fingers. Now, our story for today is a book, and it is called Aha. And the words and pictures are by Jeff Mack. Now, the words in this book are very special because there's only 2 letters. The letter, do you know what letter this is? The first letter of the alphabet, the letter A. And then we have this letter is the letter H. A and H. Those are the only 2 letters that are going to be in this story. How can you make a whole story with just 2 letters? Let's find out. You see what's on the cover here? A frog. And it's inside something. Okay, now you can't see this very well because there's a sticker in the way, but the frog is in the water relaxing and he says, ah. So A-A-H-H spells ah. Now we have A-H-H-A and that says aha. The frog has found a rock. Aha. Ah. The frog is relaxing, but uh-oh, what is going to happen? Now the dog says, aha! And the frog has been scooped up in a jar. And the frog's face says, oh no. Now the frog says, ah! A-A-H-H can mean ah, like relaxing, or ah, like freaking out. Now the frog has escaped. And he says, aha, again. Has he found a rock this time? Or is it something else? What do you think it is? It's a turtle! And now it's the turtle's turn to say, aha! Uh-oh. Now the frog says, ah! Aha! Now someone else says, aha. Who is it? An alligator. The frog looks pretty relaxed. Watch out, frog. Now the frog says, ah! I think I would say that too if I saw alligator jaws like that. Aha! Now who says, aha? A bird. And now it looks like the bird is going to eat the frog. Ah! Oh, that bird didn't eat the frog. What is it biting instead? Its own leg. The frog says, ah! And now the turtle, the alligator, and the bird all say, aha! Where's the frog jumping to? Back into the jar. And now someone else says, aha! Who is that? It's the child who tried to catch the frog in the beginning. Oh, we have a new combination here. H-A, H-A says, ha, ha. Ha, ha. Aha. Ah. The end. Books like this are great to share at home because they encourage pre-reading in a fun and exciting way. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's time to pass it over to Mr. Michael at the Nature Center to tell you more about frogs. We'll see you next week.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Discovery Club this week. Thank you to Miss Angela for that story time. Really appreciate that. And now we'll just go into our lesson. And we are going to be talking about frogs. Frogs are one of my favorite animals to watch. As I get near a pond, a little river, you'll see the presence of frogs. And it's just so fun watching them. I remember as a kid exploring. And frogs are one of those types of animals that you would see on a pretty regular basis. And we're able to look at and to follow and so forth. So I hope that you watching, you're an observant and a curious soul as well, and you have had the opportunity or will have the opportunity of searching for frogs and appreciating them in the wild. So today what we're going to talk about what a frog is. We're going to talk about the characteristics of frogs in the group that they're in. I'm going to play some frog calls for you. We're going to talk about a process called metamorphosis. That's a big word. We'll also talk about the importance and the benefit of frogs and also the food web. So that's what we're going to have on our lesson today. And then when I'm done talking, I'm going to show you again some slides, a little slideshow of some images of frogs that we've found out here at the Nature Center, green tree frogs mainly. So I want you to see that. And I have a video of one of our toads, or our toad here at the Nature Center. And just to backtrack, we'll talk a little bit about the difference between frogs and toads as well. So this is dedicated frogs, but we're going to talk a little bit about toads because we actually have a toad that we have on exhibit that I want to show you a video of when we fed it. So you're going to enjoy that. So that's what we have for scheduled today. So let's talk about frogs. Now frogs, we haven't talked about the group that frogs are in. we've been talking mainly about reptiles and birds and insects. I don't think we've talked about amphibians. I really don't think we've talked about amphibians. So this is a new type of animal. Now, with that being said, individuals who study animals, like scientists and biologists, they actually group frogs, which they're amphibians, with another group of animals we talked about, reptiles. So just to serve as a reminder, there are 5 vertebrate groups. We have fish, we have reptiles, we have amphibians, we have birds, and we have mammals. So those are all the 5 vertebrate groups. Those are animals that have a backbone. So amphibians and reptiles are actually grouped together, and we call them herps, H-E-R-P-S, herps. So that's talking about reptiles and amphibians. Now, we're going to focus just on the amphibians today, since we've already talked about reptiles many times. So let's talk a little bit about the characteristics, or what makes an amphibian an amphibian. So first, let's compare it. I think it's good to compare it to the other member of that herp group, the reptiles, since we have a good foundation of what reptiles are. So I actually have a frog here for you guys to see. Obviously, not a real frog, but that's what a frog looks like. Now, frogs, they're unlike reptiles in their skin. First of all, they have nice smooth skin. Now remember, reptiles have that bumpy, scaly skin. Segmented, it's not segmented, but connected to each other. All those scales connect to each other. Amphibians, they have nice smooth skin. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, about the benefits of that, but also some issues with having that smooth skin. So really thin, smooth skin. The next thing is they are like reptiles in that they are cold-blooded. Now, cold-blooded basically means they have to regulate their temperature based on the conditions in the environment. For example, if they're cold and they want to warm up, they'll sit on a rock in the sun and warm up. If they're hot, they'll jump into a pond. So they can't change their body temperature like you and I can, since we're warm-blooded. But frogs and amphibians, they're cold-blooded. We also know that they lay eggs, just like the snakes do. But their eggs are different. Now, their eggs, as we said, snakes typically will lay will come on ground and dig a hole and lay their eggs underground. Turtles will do that as well, lizards and so forth. Well, frogs actually will lay their eggs in the water. And their eggs they look a little different. They're very gel-like, if you will. And we're going to see some replicas or some fake eggs, so you can see what they look like a little bit later. So those are the characteristics of an amphibian. Now, I said earlier that their skin is very thin. Well, their skin is very thin. They can actually breathe through their skin, also get moisture. But also the downside to that is, if there's any pollution or pollutants in the water, well, that's going to get in their skin as well, go through their skin, and it can harm them. So what could be an advantage also could be a disadvantage, and we have to keep that in mind as well. So that's why we do everything we can to make sure our waters are not polluted. So those are characteristics of an amphibian. Smooth, thin skin. We also said they're cold-blooded legs. Now, some of the physical things that we can see, they have really big bulging eyes. In fact, their eyes, if you look straight on, look how they look to the side. So they have a really good field of vision. So it's hard to capture one or get near one, because they can see all around and they can get away. And one of the ways they can get away are these legs. Their leg starts back here, winds around, and comes back there where their feet are. So they have long legs, very powerful legs, in order for them to jump. There's been a frog known to jump 14 feet. 14 feet from one spot, from point A to point B. Imagine that. That's kind of like, let's say, maybe 2.5. It's like your parents laying down, head to feet, and then a half. So 2.5 of your parents almost. That's a pretty good length. So those powerful legs help them to hop. They have those bulging eyes. Another thing you can look at, a frog and wonder not, hey, is that a boy frog or a girl frog? They look the same. Well, girl frogs, it's hard to tell them apart because, well, they're in the water all the time, so all their makeup, lipstick, and mascara and all the makeup on a girl frog, it just washes off, so you can't even see it. And then the bow, it can't even attach to the skin very well, so it's really hard. But there is one way you can tell. Right here, where their eardrum is, if that eardrum is about the same size of their eye, or same size of their eye, or maybe even smaller, it's usually a girl. And if that eardrum is a little bit bigger than their eye, then it's a male. So that's one way you can tell them apart. Frogs come in different colors. A lot of green and brown frogs in our area, and it allows them to camouflage. They want to camouflage themselves because they are part of the food web, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. There's benefits and potential danger with that food web. But I want to make sure we understood what an amphibian is. Now, amphibian means dual life. If you translate amphibian, it means dual life. What that means is they start underwater as eggs and as tadpoles, and then they emerge out as full-grown frogs or even toads. So they live life in the water and on land. So they have a dual life. I remember taking my family out for a vacation, and two of the places that we've gone throughout our time, there was a thing called, I can't remember what, the duck tour. Yes, they're called duck tours. And you drove in this, what they call an amphibious vehicle, because it can drive in the water, okay, and move in the water, and then once it gets on land, it can drive. There was one in Missouri, Branson, Missouri, and then we also did one down in Galveston. So if you're in any of those two areas, you should take advantage of the amphibious vehicle, which allows you to go into water and also on land and be like a frog, be dual life like a frog. All right, so that's what a frog is, that's what or amphibian is. Those are some characteristics of frogs. Now let's talk a little bit about metamorphosis. That's such a big word. Can y'all say that? Metamorphosis. All right, y'all said it better than I did. So metamorphosis is a very, very important process. It is just like we talked about butterflies, how butterflies, they lay their eggs, they grow up in caterpillars, then they spin themselves in a cocoon, if you will, a chrysalis, and then they emerge as butterflies. Look totally different when they were young as an adult. Okay? Well, frogs and amphibians, they do the same thing as well. They go through a process called metamorphosis, as we just said. And metamorphosis starts, first of all, always starts with eggs. So here are what eggs of a frog look like. They're clear, and you see the black dots in there? Those are where the little baby frogs are. So they're growing in that little egg. It's a very gelatinous, gel-like egg. Now, frogs have to have moisture. You know, they have to be wet. They can't just be out of water all the time. They are dual life. They have to be in the water. Their skin has to be moist. So their eggs are like that too. They're in this encased moist gel-like material that keeps them nice and moist. So that's the egg. So they start off as eggs. As they grow inside of those eggs, they emerge eventually, and then we have tadpoles. Okay, so here's a tadpole. There's the tail, allows it to swim, so that propels it into the water. It does have eyes. I don't know if you can see them. Let's go sideways. There you go. There are the eyes. So they're swimming through the water. They're eating little macroinvertebrates, small little animals, and they're growing. So as they grow, they get bigger. The tail eventually will get shorter. But before that even happens, the tail is still there. But now, if you notice, what do you notice now? What's different about this tadpole now? Yeah, it has legs. It sprouted legs. So now it has legs. It can hop a little bit better or maneuver a little bit better. Not just swim, but can kind of walk and crawl on the bottom of the pond to find food. So as metamorphosis is taking place, it's basically transforming it into an adult. So it starts as an egg, a tadpole, and then the tadpole starts to sprout legs. As it further develops, as I said earlier, it starts losing that tail. It becomes a little shorter. But then you notice something else. What do you notice about this tadpole? Yeah, now he has front legs. He had back legs, and now he has front legs. This allows it to walk better on the surface of the pond. looking for animals to eat on, and then its tail, it gets a little bit shorter. And then you can imagine this tail gets shorter and shorter, and then the frog gets bigger and bigger, and then now he's a full-grown adult frog that can come out of the water and live on land. Now, once again, frogs, they will be mostly in the water because they have to keep their skin moist. That's how they get water, and they breathe through that skin. So you're going to find them more in the water than out of the water. So that's metamorphosis. Metamorphosis also can be translated to after change, if you will. How it's changed through the process, and the aftermath is this full adult grown frog. So we're talking about what an amphibian is, the characteristics of it. We're talking about some of the additional features of a frog, okay, like the eyes and the eardrum and the legs. We talked about metamorphosis and that process that frogs go through, starting from an egg and ending up as a full adult frog. So that metamorphosis process. Now let's transition and talk a little bit about the benefits. Now, frogs are very important to our environment, just like all forms of wildlife. And I tell you, week in and week out, one of the most important things that you can gather from this lesson that I'm sharing with you is how all the animals are connected and how every animal plays a role in our environment. And if we are to limit the amount of particular species of wildlife and have that population decline, it's going to affect everything else and cause chaos. Everything works together, whether it's a predator-prey relationship or some benefits with each other. They're all important. So let's talk about the food web. Once again, we talked about it before. So I have this printout. I don't like using the word food chain here because it means one's connected to the other. Food web, think about a web, a spider web, how all the different pieces of that web go in all different directions. It's not like one, like a chain where one's linked to another, okay? So I think food chain is what it used to be referred to. Now it's a food web. So just ignore that food chain, food chain, and think about food web. So they play an important role in the, I can't see myself. Where am I? Do I got it in full view? Okay, I want to make sure I got it in full view. So frogs play a major role in the food web. Now they're animals that get eaten, and they also eat other things. So they keep other animals in balance, and the other animals keep them, the frogs, in balance. So you have the sun creating energy, and it grows the plants. So you have this grass and vegetation. And then caterpillars come in and they eat the vegetation and the grass. So they consume the grass. And the grass is helped produced by this light, the sunlight. Then the frogs come in and eat the caterpillars or even grasshoppers or small insects that may eat the grass or eat small insects that are in the grass. That's where the frogs come in. And then, so they help control caterpillar species and population sizes, numbers, as well as small insects. So that's why they're important, because they help control insect populations or pest populations and so forth. But then they benefit because they're food for other animals. Other animals have to eat too, and some animals prefer frogs, such as snakes. That's one animal that would eat a small frog. Turtles may even eat small frogs. Birds like great blue herons, egrets, they'll eat small frogs. And in the case of the snake, a raptor like a hawk or an owl can come in and consume the snake. So you can see everything's connected, and if you take one part of that out, there's a disconnect, and it can cause chaos and a disruption in that ecosystem, in that habitat. So that's why frogs are important, because they help hold together a healthy habitat. Habitat being home for other animals, such as a river or a pond when we talk about frogs. Now let's talk about frogs and toads, because toads, they don't have their own Discovery Club. I don't see it down on our list, so we have to include them because I don't want to leave them out. So frogs and toads, they're very similar but different, okay? Frogs and toads, number one, a frog is nice and smooth, has that very smooth, thin skin, and a toad has more bumpy skin. It's very bumpy. Now, it's not scales like a reptile. It's one continuous, but it's just a bunch of bumpy parts, very bumpy. So that's one way you can tell them apart. Also, the size. Frogs typically have longer legs and they're more lean, as opposed to toads are more shorter legs and more stumpy. So that size and just the way they present themselves is another way you can tell them apart. And then also where you find them. Again, frogs are pretty much in the water. You know, they'll jump out of the water, of course, to warm up, you know, say for the sun, or to escape a predator, or whatever the case is. They will come on the land, but they won't go very far because they know they need to be moist and have water, so they jump back in the water. Toads, you'll find them near water, but they're not going to be just in water all the time. They're more terrestrial, on land. You find them in your backyards. I encourage y'all to go out with your parents one night, and even in the city, if you live in the city of Fort Worth or one of our cities in our Metroplex area, you will find some toads in your backyard. Believe it or not, my father-in-law, he just recently moved from the country in town, and he was always, when he come visit us, he's like, "Oh, you had toads, I miss my toads." And he wants toads in his backyard because he sees the benefit of them in his garden and getting rid of all these pests, these insect pests. So he wants them in his yard, and in fact, one night we went over there, we found one. We found toad. So he was excited about it. Went there, I think 2 nights ago. Same thing, found another toad. So go in your backyard at night, get a flashlight, and just shine around and see what you can find, because you'd be surprised. You may have one. Some people get like old flower pots and they crack it, make it like a half. They cut it in half, if you will. They paint it and they kind of put it down into the soil in the garden and make little toad houses. So maybe that's a project that you can take on with your parents. Number one, making a toad house, and number two, the process of going out and looking for toads in your backyard, because I know they're there. So those are some of the differences between frogs and toads. Now, I want to play some calls for you so you know what they sound like, because just like birds, frogs and toads make their own unique sounds in order to communicate. They can communicate, letting each other know where they are, and so forth. Just like birds will communicate with each other too. So I have this little handy-dandy device where I have a little card I put in here, and I push a button, and it makes a sound for that animal. And there's all sorts of cards that we have for different animals, but I have the fabulous frogs. All right. So one of my favorite ones, I like the bullfrog. The bullfrog is a very large frog, one of the larger frogs we have in our area. And as they're big, they have like a low call. So let's listen to the bullfrog. Can y'all do that? Can y'all make a bullfrog sound? Let's hear it. Oh, come on. You can do better than that. Roar, roar, roar. Come on. Okay, that's much better, much better. All right, so let's play it one more time. Bullfrog. Okay. The next frog I want to play for you is a spadefoot. Okay? And a spadefoot, if you may have an older brother, older sister, maybe they're a teenager or a betweener, not yet a teenager, but act like they're a teenager, you know, too cool for school. You know who I'm talking about out there. This kind of sounds like that too cool for school teenager. No offense. Especially when you ask them to clean up their room and stuff, they'll kind of go. So you younger siblings, you probably heard that. Your older siblings making that call. It's a spadefoot. They didn't even know that. A green tree frog. This is another one of my favorites because we have them here at the Nature Center, and it sounds like aliens. Let's listen to it. Sounds like an invasion of aliens to me. Weird sound. Another one that we have in our area, chorus frogs. I think that one people describe as getting a comb and rubbing your fingers across like a comb. Creaky sound. One of my favorites, a gray tree frog. We do have those in our area. Listen to the gray tree frog. have heard that one in your backyard and you didn't realize it. This is the one that, like birds, they make sounds like that are based on their name, like a J, 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 Phoebe, Phoebe, Phoebe. Well, this one is called a peeper because it sounds like it's saying peeper. That's a cool sound. I'll play one more. This leopard frog. This is a common one we have in our area as well. It sounds like someone's opening a door. Kind of the cloak, creeping door. So anyway, those are some frog calls. And again, I play those because you may not hear them very much because you're probably asleep whenever the frogs are out. So I hope you enjoyed that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a slideshow and a video, and then we'll conclude our Discovery Club. Was that not the coolest video, slow-mo video you've seen of a frog eating some food with that long sticky tongue that I didn't even talk about earlier? Oh man, I love frogs. They're so cool. So hopefully you enjoy seeing those photos of those green tree frogs and other frogs as well as that video and the lesson we had today. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude Discovery Club for this week. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I know it was a long one today, but I appreciate you tuning in for today's lesson on frogs. I want to thank all the photographers for providing those photos, and of course Miss Angela at the Fort Public Library. You rock, Miss Angela. Thank you for providing that quality story time for our program. Really appreciate that. So we'll do this again next week, same time, same place, so tune in. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and we're going to see y'all next week. Bye bye.